Alright, Shalom. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to begin this lesson by giving all glory, all honor, and all praises unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Ruach Kodash, giving double honors, double unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who surely do rule well. To the men standing by the highways and byways pushing this doctrine, I'd like to say Shalom. And even unto the sincere Akwat, the sisters who sit listening these lessons in silence, subjection, and obedience unto their husbands, I like to say, Shalom. Alright, there's a brother here, Mayasha, coming back to you again with another bit of edification, and Lord's will in this lesson is edifying, right? Right, so the topic for this lesson, as you see the word here, sacrifice. Topic for this lesson is what? The stage is set for a great sacrifice, or the time is at hand for a great sacrifice. Because when you read the scriptures, and we will go into it in the book of Leviticus chapter 1 from verse 1, there's a law on sacrifice. And following the points and statements made in that law, I'd like to bring out that, throughout scriptures, there's a prophecy that is set to happen in the earth at a time appointed that will fulfill a great sacrifice, right? So going into the word sacrifice, definition 1A from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, right? The act of giving up or losing something of value for the sake of something else, which this is going to be a point we extrapolate on, for the part 2, because I'll break this up into a 2-part video, right? Something of value like what? Like lives, people's lives, right? B, something of value given up or lost for the sake of something else, right? Yahushua, he sacrificed himself for the elect's sake. Paul says, or Paul quoted, I endure all things for the elect's sake, right? Definition 2, an act of offering to a deity something precious, deity or God, right? Yahweh. Especially the killing of a victim on an altar. You've seen this, so like I've seen this, the example of this being used in a sentence, a place where human/animal sacrifices were made in ancient rituals, something offered, definition 2b, in sacrifice, a goat offered as a sacrifice. And this here, definition 4, sacrifice burnt, right? Right? So what we understand there's a prophecy written about in the Bible where the stage is set basically for a great sacrifice in the earth by the hand of the Most High Yahweh, right? Let's see here, right? So going now to the law of sacrifice in the book of Leviticus 1, because what we're going to do is we're going to pull out some points here, right? Where we're going to, after we pull these points out from reading this, from verses 1 to 9, we're going to look and see if in the scriptures, things that are needed for a sacrifice as listed in Leviticus 1, right? If we see those things throughout the scriptures, right? So Leviticus 1 from 1 in the GNT, heading sacrifices burnt whole. Yahweh called to Moses from the tent of Yahweh's presence and gave him the following rules for the Israelites to observe when they offer their sacrifices. When you offer an animal sacrifice, it may be one of your cattle or one of your sheep or goats. If you are offering of your cattle as a burnt offering, you must bring a bull without any defects. You must present it at the entrance of the tent of Yahweh's presence so that the Lord Yahweh will accept you. You shall put your hand on its head, and it will be accepted as a sacrifice to take away your sins. You shall kill the bull there, and the Aaronite priests shall present the blood to Yahweh, and then throw it against all 4 sides of the altar located at the entrance of the tent. Then you shall skin the animal and cut it up, and the priest shall arrange firewood on the altar and light it. They shall put it on the fire, the pieces of the animal, including the head and the fat. You must wash the internal organs and the hind legs, and the officiating priest will burn the whole sacrifice on the altar. The odor of this food offering is pleasing to Yahweh. Right, so reading this, we understand what that verse 1 gave him the following rules for Israelites to observe when they offer sacrifices. So where's things you could pick up from this? One, you need a priest or priests, right? Two, you need a means of sacrifice, meaning what? When you go to the verse 9 again, or rather, let me see. Verse 8, they shall put on the fire the pieces of the animal, including the head and the fat, right? You must wash the internal organs and the hind legs, and the officiating priest will burn the whole sacrifice on the altar. The order of this food offering is pleasing to Yahweh. So the means of sacrifice meaning what? The fire. You're going to need fire to sacrifice this animal, to cause that burning and that sweet savor and that odor to go up to the noses of the Most High, nostrils of the Most High, right? Also, you're going to need an altar, a place whereon the sacrifice needs to be burnt, right? Where the sacrifice is going to happen. You're going to need something to sacrifice, aka an animal here, right? They shall put on the fire the pieces of the animal, right? So they need something to sacrifice, something that needs to be burnt. And what? Well, I ain't had this point here, but to what I about it come to my mind, right? I could also bring on that in part 2. You need blood, right? Does it make mention here of the blood? You need to wash the blood and all these things. So blood need to be present. And when we go into this prophecy, you're going to see that it's going to be a bloody sacrifice. And then what? You're going to need a sin. Because what? The sacrifice, again, right? No, I didn't go into it here. But basically, you're going to need, the sacrifice is made as an atonement for sin, right? So a sin needs to be present for this to happen. So all of these things have been covered throughout prophecy for a great sacrifice to happen on this planet upon the return of the Lord, which is the first thing we're going to get into. This is set to happen. This great sacrifice is set to happen on a specific day. We don't know the exact date, but we know it coincides with the return of Yahweh, a date often labeled in the scriptures as what? The day of Yahweh, the day of the Lord. Isaiah 13 from verse 6. Isaiah 13 from verse 6. Holy, for the day of Yahweh is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. And they shall be afraid, pangs and sorrows shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. Behold, the day of Yahweh cometh, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. Which, perfectly speaking here, you're seeing if you could go from verse 6 to 9, if you separate these verses and you really look at them, they're literally talking about this specific sacrifice in terms of somebody going to be burning somebody. There's fire present. There's a land that this is going to take place on, right? Lay the land desolate, right? Verse 9. But there's people the animal that's going to be burnt, right? And what? You're also seeing the sin, right? He shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. So perfectly speaking, we've seen that all points here met for the sacrifice. And as that verse 6 says, holy, for the day of Yahweh is at hand. So the day in which he's going to commit this sacrifice shall soon come. Book of Ezekiel, chapter 30, verse 1. The word of Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith Yahweh power, how ye woe worth the day. For the day is near, even the day of Yahweh is near, a cloudy day, and it shall be the time of the heathen. So what the Lord is planning, a great sacrifice at a specific day in the earth, and what it's prophetic. This is going to happen, right? So we want to get into now knowing that there's a day that this is set to happen. Now we go into the priest who's going to be offering up this burnt offering unto Yahweh as a sweet savor unto the nostrils of the Most High. Hebrews chapter 3, reading verse 1. Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, Yahushua Mashiach. Mashiach Yahushua, right? Seeing what? We have one high priest, I believe, as Hebrews 4. Right, Hebrews 4:14. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Yahushua the Son of power, let us hold fast our profession, for we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. So, perfect thing. Not only do we have a high priest who's going to come and commit this sacrifice, right? But we have an high priest who's also what? Sinless and blameless before the Most High. Literally came in his last incarnation on earth, and what he did not sin. What a perfect person to offer up this sacrifice. And we know he coming with the fire. Isaiah 63 from verse 1. Who is this? So who is this person, right? That cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Bozrah. Dyed in red with blood. This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Right? Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth the wine fat. I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me. For I will tread them in mine anger, and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments. Again, the blood, which we could go into part 2 with that and go extrapolate more. This precept will come back, and I will stain all mine raiment. So this person here who's spoken about in Isaiah 63 and 1, who is this that cometh from Edom, right? In verse 3 said, what? I will stain all mine raiment. For the day of vengeance, or the day of the Lord, Isaiah 13, day of the Lord, Ezekiel 30, verse 1, right? Is in mine heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. So what? The person who is going to offer up this fire, to burn these sacrifices and offer it as a sweet savor, a sweet odor unto the nostrils of the Most High Yahweh, is his son Yahushua. Ezekiel 9. In fact, I'll read Matthew 24 first. Matthew 24:27. For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Where I was trying to say, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So what? The Lord coming, right? And he's the Lord's Son, Yahushua, the high priest. He's coming. He's the one who's going to offer up the sacrifice, right? He's the one who's bringing the fire. Ezekiel 9 from verse 1. He cried also in mine ears with a loud voice, saying, cause them that have charge over the city to draw near, even every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. And when you read this chapter, it tells a story of sacrifice. What that the wayward Israelites in the earth, and in fact, all the people in the earth set to pay for their sins, and the Lord going to unleash the angels upon them to bring death, fury, wrath, and destruction upon the inhabitants of the earth, right? So what this chapter even tells of a sacrifice, or tells the story of a sacrifice that will happen in the earth. They're speaking about Jacob's trouble, right? Verse 2, and behold, 6 men came from the way of the higher gate, which lieth toward the north, and every man a slaughter weapon in his hand. And one man among them was clothed with linen with a writer's inkhorn by his side. Who's this man clothed in linen with a writer's inkhorn? This speaks of Yahushua. Writer's inkhorn is a writing kit. And we know it speaks about the Lamb's book of life. In Daniel 12:1, it speaks of the book. And at that time shall thy people be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. Whose book? Yahushua's book, the Lamb's book of life. Right? So if you have a book, you must have a pen or a writing tool to what? Write down the names inside of the book. So they're speaking about Yahushua. Even when you read Revelation 19, and I believe it's verse 11. If it's not 11, I believe it's 1. It speaks of Yahushua being clothed in linen as well. I can't remember the precept right now. It ain't coming to me, but Yahushua, it have a precept in the scripture speak about Yahushua being clothed in linen as well. So what we know this person in Ezekiel 9, who's this speaking about, is Yahushua, right? Ezekiel 9 and now verse 3, and the glory of the power of Israel was gone up from the cherub, whereupon he was to the threshold of the house, and he called to the man clothed in linen, or clothed with linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side. Right? I'm going to go back to this chapter later on in the video. But what? We see in what? It have a high priest coming, and what? He's bringing the means of sacrifice. He's bringing the fire. Let me just get this real quick. Is it Nahum 1 and 9? No, it's not 1 and 9. Let's see. Let's see. I believe guys. That's definitely 1 and 18 is a good one. Right, Salakia, not Nahum, it's actually Isaiah. Isaiah 66. Yep, Isaiah 66, and I'll even go from verse 14. Yep, Isaiah 66 and 14, right? Because we know the Lord has to come with fire. In fact, yep, this, and then I could go back to that Isaiah 13 what I read earlier, right? Isaiah 66 and 14, and when you see this, your heart shall rejoice and your bones shall flourish like an herb, and the hand of Yahweh, who's the hand of Yahweh, Yahushua, right, shall be known towards his servants, and his indignation towards his enemies. For behold, Yahweh will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, we just read in Matthew 24, to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. So what Yahushua is coming back here in the name of his Father, what? To render rebuke with flames of fire. But for by fire and by his sword will Yahweh plead with all flesh, and the slain of Yahweh shall be many. So what we see in there is a means of sacrifice spoken about on the day of the Lord. He's coming here with fire. There's what the Isaiah. In fact, before I get that, I'll even read, because what the means of fire that the Lord coming back with is what? He chariots, right? The clouds, you shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. That Matthew 24, we read those clouds speaking about chariots. They 2 Ezra 13 and 5. And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of heaven, right, to subdue the man that came out of the sea. But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, and flew up upon it. But I would have seen the regional place where the hill was graven, and I could not. This great mountain is speaking about a chariot, where the day of the Lord is darkness and not light. Yahushua is coming And he's coming in a chariot so big it's going to cover the face of the earth. The entirety of the earth is going to see Yahushua in his father's chariot. Verse 8, and after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were so afraid, and yet durst fight. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war. But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. And they were all mixed together, right? The blast of fire, the flaming breath, the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them up every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. So who's the one coming with the fire? It's Yahushua. Verse 32. In fact, I believe it's verse 26, the same, verse 25. This is the meaning of the vision, right? We just read from 2 Ezra 13 to 11. Sorry, from 2 Ezra 13, 5 to 11. Whereas thou sawest a man coming up from the midst of the sea, the same is he whom the Most High, Yahweh, the highest, had kept a great season. Who's been kept a great season? Yahushua. Since he went to the heavens 2,000 years ago, he was told to sit, and he was not told to get up until he had to fulfill this prophecy. And that prophecy has not been fulfilled, evidently. So he's still up there now. Which by his own self shall deliver his creature. Matthew 1:21 to 23. He shall call his name Yahushua, for he shall save his people from their sins. And he shall order them that are left behind, right? And whereas thou sawest that out of his mouth there came a blast of wind and fire and storm, right? That he held neither sword nor any instrument of war, but that the rushing in of him destroyed the whole multitude that came to subdue him. This is the interpretation, right? Right? And verse 32, and the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the sign shall happen which I showed thee before, and then shall my son be declared, whom thou sawest as a man ascending. So even more, verse 35, but he shall stand upon the top of Mount Zion, Revelation 14. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion. So who's that? Yahushua. The priest who's coming with the fire to commit the sacrifice is Yahushua. Revelation 6:1. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, white chariot, white being pure, horse representing power, right? And he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Yahushua is coming here with the flames of fire to render the rebuke of the Most High power. But he's not only coming here with just chariots as his only means of fire, but he's also coming here with the missiles. Isaiah 13 from verse 5, they come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even Yahweh, Bashem Yahushua, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. So the Lord also has weapons that has his fire that he's going to bring to commit this sacrifice. Jeremiah 50 verse 25. Yahweh opened his armory and had brought forth the weapons of his indignation, for this is the work of Yahweh, power of hosts, in the land of the Chaldeans. Going to is it Isaiah 54:17, 54:16, Salakia. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy. The waster, what he's bringing the fire, The weapons also are his means of fire, which he is going to unleash. In these last days, these nuclear missiles, these bombs, these ICBMs, to scorch the land, to scorch the people, to scorch the sacrifice. Yahweh Bashem Yahushua is coming, the chariots coming, and the nukes coming, the fire is coming to commit the sacrifice. And what? We have an altar as well, right? There's a place this is set to take, this prophecy is set to take place at or happen at, right? Ezekiel 9 and 2 again. In fact, let me put this in red. And behold, 6 men came from the way of the higher gate, which lieth toward the north, and every man a slaughter weapon in his hand. And one man among them was clothed with linen, with a writer's ink on by his side, and they went in and stood beside what? The brazen altar. Who, where, what is this brazen altar speaking of? Where is this sacrifice set to take place, right? Well, to get the long and short before we go into the precepts, basically the land of the north, the spiritual Sodom and Egypt, the whore that's spoken about in Revelation, Bozrah, as you would have read in Isaiah 63, or all of that, just to keep it simple, America. This sacrifice is set to take place and set to happen where? In America. We know it's also we expect it to happen in some other parts of the world as well, because we know America is the new Babylon. Babylon has provinces, right? So we believe, right in this little twin island republic I live in Trinidad and Tobago, we believe here to eat a nuke as well, right? Here to feel some fire. But we also know, pursuant to the prophecies, Ezekiel 36, I believe is the correct one, or if not Ezekiel 36, Ezekiel 38. We also know, let's see, fury of things. Ezekiel 38, right? And it shall come to pass, Ezekiel 38 and 18, and it shall come to pass at the same time when Gog shall come against the land of Israel, saith Yahweh power, that my fury shall come upon my face, for in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel. So what we even know that Israel had to eat some of this fire as well. But the great sacrifice, the stage that is set for the great sacrifice in the earth, where is that going to happen? Well, as we said, that's going to happen in Babylon near you, aka America, right? The Ezekiel 35 reading from verse 1. Moreover, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. Because we know what? Spiritually speaking, Mount Seir, or the new Mount Seir, the capital of Edom, the dwelling place of Edom, as Genesis 38 puts it, I believe it's Genesis 38, Genesis 36, I believe, thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom, right? So the new dwelling place, the great city of Esau and Edom today, the great capital is Esau and Edom today, the new Bozrah is where? America, right? Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it, and say unto it, Thus saith Yahweh power, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out mine hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. And I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am Yahweh, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Right? Verse 5, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith Yahweh, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Thus will I make Mount Seir, spiritually, prophetically speaking, America, most desolate, and will cut off from it him that passeth out, and him that returneth. And I will fill his mountains with his slain men, in thy hills and in the valleys and in all thy rivers shall they fall that are slain with the sword. I will make thee perpetual desolations, and thy city shall not return, and ye shall know that I am Yahweh. So what the place is set for this great sacrifice, the capital of Edom today, America, Bozrah. Right? Revelation 17:1. And I came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials and talked with me, saying unto me, Salakia, come hither, and I will show unto thee the judgments of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Jumping down to verse 17. In fact, I'll read verse 14. In fact, I'll read verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, right, representative of the NATO and EU nations today, these shall hate the whore, right, Babylon, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and what? Burn her with fire. If these 10 horns speaking about nations, that whore has to be speaking about a nation. And that nation is said to be burnt with fire. Why? Because that is the place of the sacrifice. Verse 17. For power had put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of power shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Right? Going now to the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, reading verse 5. For my sword, right, my fire, my means of destruction, the means of the sacrifice shall be bathed in heaven, and it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my cursed judgment. The sword of Yahweh is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, and with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For Yahweh had a sacrifice in Bozrah, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. So we know what? The place where this sacrifice is said to be burned, this brazen altar spoken of in Ezekiel 9:2, has to be speaking about this land of Idumea, which we know is America today. Jeremiah 49:13, for I have sworn by myself, saith Yahweh, that Bozrah shall become a desolation, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be perpetual waste. The Lord is set to burn that place as well as his sacrifices there and on it. Right? And final precept, and we close with this. Amos 1:12. In fact, I'll read verse 12, right? But I will send fire upon Timon, which shall devour the palaces of Bozrah. So what? The Lord has a place he's going to light this sacrifice on fire. This has been part 1. Stage is set for a great sacrifice. The Lord is planning a great sacrifice. Prophetically speaking, we could definitely see that is set to happen. We went over who the priest is coming. Sorry, who is this priest who's coming to make this sacrifice? Yahushai. You know, the means through which the sacrifice is had, right? You know, with fire, right? We understand is the chariots and the nukes in this time bringing that fire. And we understand where the sacrifice is said to be had. America. In the scriptures, you'll see them named Bozrah, Babylon, you see the whore, Edom, Idumea, palaces of Bozrah, all these things, right? So even what? I ain't even get one for that, land of the north. Let me see here. Land of the north. And yeah, well, yeah. Speaking of Russia, Jeremiah 53, for out of the north there cometh up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein, and they shall depart, both man and beast, right? I ain't get on, right? No, yeah, Zechariah 2:6. Right, Zechariah 2, and I'll read from verse 5. For I say, Yahweh, will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and will be the glory in the midst of her. Ho, ho, come forth and flee from the land of the north. Same thing said in, I believe it's Revelation 18. Come up out of her, my people, and be not partakers of her sins, or be cut off in her iniquity. Why? Because fire is coming to that place, right? Saith Yahweh, for I have spread you abroad as the four winds of heaven. Saith Yahweh, deliver thyself, O Zion, that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon. Who's the daughter of Babylon again? I believe that is Psalms 137. Right. I can't remember that precept, but we know the daughter of Babylon is speaking of Esau and Edom, right? So what the daughter of Babylon, or what the Edomites and the chief capital city today is what? Just like our ancient time, they had Abijah, they have Abijah today, which is speaking of America. So we know where the sacrifice is going to take place, where this brazen altar is. So Lord willing, this lesson was edifying and that you were edified. In closing, we like to say, Kal Halalim La Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Nucha Kodash. To give double honors, double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who surely do well. To the men standing by the highways and byways, sincerely pushing this doctrine, we like to say Shalom. And even unto the sincere Aquat, the sisters who sit listening to these lessons in silence, subjection, and obedience unto their husbands, I like to say Shalom, right? There's a brother here, Maya Shala, coming to you again with another bit of edification from the heralds of Yahushai's camp. Until next time, I like to say Shalom.